it was dedication back then, 100%. Nothing else could have been in my life that I wanted more than the rave.
Entering the dance, it's not what you expected. Come with us, close your eyes and you'll accept it.
I just wanted to be unruly, say up to all of it, and just, kind of go out there and just be a bit of a menace and just do drugs and have like the best time in my life, basically, and just try and hide all of this stuff that was going on in my brain a bit. So yeah.
Please believe that when you leave, you won't forget this. It's the sound of Mandi and Mandidextrous.
It was the music that saved me. It was learning and developing the ability to write really helped me, because when I write music, it's the one time where I don't think about anything apart from writing the music,
Remix, repeat this. 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 Remix, 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 repeat this. I've been live, but I'm gonna go deep on this.
Switch. Yes. Welcome to the One More Thing podcast, and welcome to 2024, a brand new year. We're kicking it off in fine style as we welcome none other than Mandidextrous to our series of deep and meaningful interviews. My name is Dave Columbo Jenkins, and I really can't think of another artist who's immersed in the drum and bass scene in the last few years who's made such a positive impression on the whole scene as Mandidextrous has. They've come through with their own sound and style and overcome a huge amount of barriers and challenges to do this, setting a whole new benchmark for other non-binary artists to follow. Mandi is no stranger to rave culture, of course. Coming through in the late 90s free party circuit, they'd lived a whole other chapter, becoming queen of the hard tech scene for many, many years before they put their own twist on drum and bass and took things to the next level. I caught up with Mandi at the very beginning of December last year, just after they'd been awarded the Critics' Choice Awards in the Drum and Bass Arena Awards, but before the results had been made public. Now Christmas and New Year are fully behind us, and we're raring to get stuck into the new year. It's the perfect time to set this interview out into the wild. If you know anything about Mandi's journey or how sick they are at smashing up the dance floor, then you will know this is going to be an inspiring listen. In the words of Maddie V, we're going to go deep on this.
Remix, repeat this. I've been live, but I'm going to go deep on this.
Mandidextrous, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast.
Hey.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I'm good. Yes, thank you, Dave Columbo.
Brilliant, cool. We're wrapping up 2023 now. We're going to go through your whole year, really, but just to kind of start off with, I mean, this year's been absolutely phenomenal for you, hasn't it? Your busiest year so far, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's definitely been one of my busiest years so far. I can't deny that. And just one of the most overwhelming years, and unbelievable stuff has happened this year that I actually never thought would happen to me in my entire musical career. So, I can't complain whatsoever. So yeah, it's been great.
It seems to have been a year of firsts for you as well, in terms of being able to play that 7 or 6 hour set of your own material. You're literally days off playing, you're hosting your first 360 and things like that. It seems to have been a year of kind of setting brand new benchmarks for yourself, really, and benchmarks for the scene.
Yeah. I mean, there's been like so much stuff this year, that I still can't really wrap my head around, from like being involved with the Ram Orchestra at the start of the year with Techno on My Mind getting played by me and Bish, and by an orchestra, which was a madness, to some of the shows that I did this year, playing Printworks main stage twice in a row, going on tour with Let It Roll, covering for Andy C at Let It Roll this year on the main stage. Like all of these things like amalgamating into like, and what's happening towards the end of this year, I don't think I can say, but there's something coming up soon that I think you know about, Dave.
Oh, I do know about that very much, and this will be out by the time that's come out, actually. So we don't have to be secretive about this as well.
Okay, well,
award-winning Mandidextrous. Oh, go on.
Which like for me, like this, when you gave me this, I honestly didn't know what to do or what to say, but for me, it's like I I do appreciate the awards because people deserve to be, uplifted for what they're doing. And, I know that there's a lot of voting going on and everything like that. But for me, like just because it's a critics award, it wasn't voted by the general population, the public. And I know that I'm new to the drum and bass scene in that way. So just to be able to get something like this, which comes from the support of people like yourself and other people in the industry, it is crazy, for me, absolutely crazy. And what a way to round the year off and stuff, and it's just been
Oh,
mad.
oh,
So
go on. That's amazing. It's my favorite award, not just because we actually have an influence in who wins, and we actually get to vote ourselves.
mm,
But also it's always the look of surprise on people's
mm,
faces, like every single time, whether it's Caliber, whether it's Mantra, or whether it's yourself, really. Everybody's had that same type of reaction where they don't really know why they've been invited to the awards or anything like that. And then suddenly they're being presented with something.
yeah,
It's one of
yeah,
my
yeah,
favorite moments in one of the most hectic days of my professional year. Like I always leave,
yeah,
it's a blur because there's lots of interviews, lots of scripts, lots of weird stuff. Like I'm more used to being on my own in this little room that you see me talking in any time we do an interview. So to suddenly be
yeah.
out with all of these people and doing interviews, it's always strange. And that's always the
Mm.
highlight. Giving the Critics' Choice Award is always the highlight.
Well, it was an honor to be that person that you gave it to this year. And I could see you must have been so busy on the day, and I bumped into Sota on the way out and Tom was sat there and he was up for a bunch of rewards. It was just so amazing to see, because people like Tom Sota, like I've just over the last couple of years just seen him blow up, and his music production and what he does is just so special and amazing. And this is why I think it's just such a nice thing to uplift these people, and especially with getting the votes in from the ravers as well. It's super cool. It's great to see.
That's brilliant. And it's really nice to hear something positive about the awards because there's a lot of critique about them.
Hmm.
I'm gonna try and be careful about what I say and be really objective because it's something personal for me. I've been writing it for years, I've been involved in it for years. I know how
Yeah.
fair it is. And then when I
Hmm.
see people saying it's rigged or it's this or it's that, I totally understand where they're coming from. I don't
Mm.
think, as a creative person, I don't think I would ever ask people to vote for me. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
I feel a bit weird asking for people's votes, but it is the people who actually engage with their fan base and ask for votes, like you mentioned, Sota. Yeah, this
Mm.
is going to go out after the awards have been announced, so he did win something as well. I don't think you know that
Yeah.
yet, though, or maybe if you do, then you've kept it secret and nice and professional.
No, I don't know yet.
Yeah, so like people like Sota, they've engaged with their community, their fan base. They've used social media for the positive things that it can offer into our lives, and the people who actually request votes from their fans are always the people who get nominated. Like it's
Yeah.
but a lot of people have critical opinions about it, and I always respect that because there's two sides to things. But it's
Yeah.
really fair, and it is like as long as people remember that it's just a celebration of drum and bass and of the music and of all of the people involved, then
Yeah.
it can only be a positive thing, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And like at the end of the day, it's people might say it's rigged for popularity or this, that, and the other. But artists that engage with their fans, like you say, like the likes of Mosey and Sota and chasing status or whatever, they're the people that are really concentrating and working hard. Look at Jack Hedex. He's blown up so much, but it's because he knows how to interact with his audience and he knows what he's doing. He's a talented artist, just like everyone. So, at the end of the day, if these polls reflect that, then it's not such a bad thing at all. And it's really good to support these people and yeah, just give them something back. So like I can understand, but at the same time, I think it's quite a positive thing, to do. So yeah.
Yeah. And it puts us in a league of our own. This is
Mm.
something that Jenna and I wrapped up this year's ceremony with is the fact that, there's the odd house music awards, there's the odd EDM awards. You see them flare up, and then you see that because they don't make any money at all, they cost like the
Mm.
drum and bass arena a load of money to do. So
Yeah.
anybody who's in it for just making money soon stop hosting award shows very quickly.
Yeah.
So now this is one
Yeah.
of the longest running ones in electronic music, full stop. It's been going for 15 years. And so that's,
Yeah.
that looks great on Drum and Bass Arena, but it looks great on drum and bass in general that we've been able to
Yeah,
have
yeah,
that
yeah,
consistency and that now annual tradition. And it's not even the only awards of the genre as well. There's the drum and bass awards as well, which I
yeah.
think is all a testament to the strength and the strength of the culture, really, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And from a place where I come from, Dave, it's like the underground, like hard tech scene and stuff like that. There's nothing like this, and actually it's really hard to form like such strong fan bases there and stuff like that, and what drum and bass is doing now is mind blowing, from where I left drum and bass when I stopped being a drum and bass DJ, which I guess we're going to get to into becoming a techno DJ. Drum and bass was nowhere near what it is now. And then I've come back, into the scene and really looking at what's going on, 10 years or so down the line, and I'm blown away. It's all over the world, it's everywhere, every country that I go and play in. Drum and bass is huge, so yeah, it's bloody gargantuan. So, it's
Let's go
unreal.
back. Let's go back though to that first chapter because there's so much I want to ask you, especially about all of the
Yeah.
new things you're doing. Like literally before we started this Zoom call, I just listened to your Nang project and stuff like that, which is brand new. So there's loads I want to ask you about now, but there's
Yeah.
lots I don't know about your origin story, like
Hmm.
your very
Hmm.
first rave and how you've ended
Yeah.
up having this career and these incredible highs that you've had this year. So
Yeah.
take me back to
Hmm.
your first ever kind of interaction with music. Was there any point when you were really little, kind of primary school age?
Yeah. Yeah, I think actually it kind of all started for me with my punk rock cousin that I don't really speak to anymore. He was into the Sex Pistols, all that kind of stuff, but he gave me a tape actually that had like some Prodigy tunes on it, Incredible General, Leviticus the Burial, like all of these like old classics. It must have been like maybe some kind of Jungle Mania tape or something like that from way back when. And I was a drummer in a band, and I just fell in love with it because I was like, wow, this music's got crazy drums in it. This is so cool. And I love the groove of the bass and everything like that. And so that kind of got me into it. And then my friend at school, my old best mate, he was starting to find his way into it, and together we started kind of like, meeting up after school, going around to his house, annoying his mum, blaring it out on the stereos and stuff like that. And then eventually, I basically kind of got kicked out of my mum's house when I was about 14. I got kicked out of school, kicked out of my mum's house, and I found the rave. Me and my kind of group of mates, um we'd hang around, at the weekends, and in my town where I grew up, which is Chesham in Buckinghamshire. We'd heard of a few illegal rave sound systems, and we wanted to go to an illegal rave. By this point, I'd also started DJing, just brought a set of decks. I was awful. I think I owned about 5 records, and I just used to spend all my time trying to mix them together. I think one of them was a hard house record, and the other two were drum and bass, and then there was a techno record, and some of them didn't go with them. Obviously techno and drum and bass. It was like back then I was like so confused by it all. But yeah, just started going to these illegal raves down near me, free parties called Survival Sound System. And this was like 1999 kind of time. I also went to Exodus Festival, their last ever one that they did in Milton Keynes. And and I fell in love with it. I was experiencing drugs for my first time, and it was just amazing. It was like it was a
Wow.
whole new world.
Yeah, what a
Yeah.
time to get involved in that as well. Because there was a bit of a kind of a change because I started getting into free parties just a few years before that as well in South Wales. And at that time, you had the older people who've been doing it from the late 80s or even prior to that, doing those kind of free festivals. And that
Hmm.
was the infrastructure that had originally put it in place, the original kind of travelers. But then there was a new generation of people. They were getting very jaded with things by that stage. And then there was a new generation who were just slightly older than me. So they'd be like, they would have been in their 20s at that stage, putting on new free
Yeah.
parties. And there was this new, fresh energy, a lot
Yeah.
more focus on the drum and bass and the breakcore side of things, whereas
Mm.
previously it had been kind of acid techno throughout. Like, certainly at free parties where it was the stronger, more extreme forms of music it was a lot
Yeah.
more hardcore and acid techno, and you could feel it moving. The
Mm.
locations were changing, the people who were organizing it were changing. It felt like a whole new kind of chapter for free parties at that stage. I don't know if you felt that with Survival or where they were at, what how long they've been doing it for.
Yeah, I mean, Survival, the crew that I kind of knocked about with when I first started going to parties and stuff like that, and we started our own sound system, but that lot were a little bit older than us. They were probably mostly about like 3, 4 years ahead of us, but they had definitely come from, Exodus raves, the Norfolk raves as well, and and Southwest raves as well. We never really ventured that further afield at the time. We were very localized in that area. But they were certainly like a good like 3, 4 years above us. But the energy back then was crazy. The effort people would go to was mad, and down where we were, the music was very much like kind of hard house, new energy, jungle, drum and bass, not much of anything else, a little bit hard trance at that early point. But yeah, the energy that they all had was just crazy, and like the community was really strong. They all lived in a squat in Amersham, like a massive mansion that they'd all taken over. And, I spent a lot of time there, like kind of experiencing things and getting involved in drugs and all sorts, and also DJing a lot, and I got to the point where I started DJing at the raves, and back then I was mixing jungle drum and bass. I'd got really into mixing kind of early 2000s, so like 2000, 2001. I was really, really like it took over my life, my entire life was basically just being at friends' houses, squats in the week, mixing endless records, going up to London at the weekends, Black Market, Soho Records, all of those kind of places, and just spending whatever money I could get on, on vinyl and just DJing constantly. And I managed to start playing at Survival and our own free parties that we were putting on as well as a crew, which used to be we started as Vortex, and then that turned into a link up with our friends from Aylesbury called Disturbance, and we started Distortex, stupid name. And then from there, I ended up getting friendly with some of the guys from Storm, Project Storm from Oxford, played a few of their parties, and also a crew from Wendover Ways called Mission as well, and Survival. We're all like one little community, in the early 2000s. And it was the life. Do you know what I mean? It was like I wish I'd experienced it in the 80s. Do you know what I
Mm.
mean? When it all kind of kicked off. Like I wish I'd have got to experience that. But I feel what I experienced towards the end of the 90s was still vibes, it's
Oh,
still mad
massively.
happening. Yeah, it was cool, there was like, mile long queues on the motorways, the convoys for miles, police raids that were sometimes really heavy and people getting battered and bruised and fighting for the cause, and then other ones that were like really peaceful and stuff like that. And like there wasn't mobile phones so much
Mm.
back then. You had to just go to a car park and wait in a certain car park, and then some car will come past, or a van or a truck, and be like, follow this truck convoy down the motorway, end up at some mad party in the middle of nowhere, and just strand yourself there for a night and a day or whatever. It was amazing. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
amazing.
Sometimes multiple days. If it was a really good party and you didn't have
Yeah,
vehicle yourself, then you're there at the mercy of the party really, and just like seeing
yeah,
how it takes you. So you were properly like way in over your head in the culture then. I must have been
yeah,
incredibly young at that stage. If you
yeah,
left school and left home at the age of 14, I'd imagine you're not
yeah.
even 18 by this stage then.
Yeah, so that was it. Yeah, I was like 17, 18, and super young, super super boisterous, and like I was obviously I've been on a big journey with myself, and back then I knew there was things going on with me, and that was the reason I got kicked out of my mum's house. Because she found out about me and my kind of gender battles, and back then it was hard, and she didn't really understand it, and so I was like in this kind of state of angst where I just wanted to be unruly, say fuck you to all of it and just, kind of go out there and just be a bit of a menace and just do drugs and have like the best time in my life, basically, and just try and hide all of this stuff that was going on in my brain a bit. So yeah.
Yeah, so you're protesting against yourself and your own brain just as much as you are against your parents or against the authorities or anything like that, really, just in this constant state of flux, really, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. But it was as trying as it was for me at points back then, it was like the scene and the community that I'd got involved in was so amazing, that none of that really mattered at the time. What was my heart and soul was the free party, it was getting together with my mates, finding a way to make some money hand over fist and buying speakers, making speakers, trying to borrow stuff other sound systems, hiring generators from, local tool shops, when they knew full damn well we were going to take it out to a field and run speakers all night, and hiring vans and, a few of my friends got their driving license. I was like relatively together compared to some of my mates, so I'd always be the one in the rig van and I'd always be the one talking to the police at our parties and all all of that stuff because, I mean, I used to get pretty wild, but I could hold it down, whereas some of my mates, out of this world. So it was dedication back then, 100%. I can Nothing else could have been in my life that I wanted more than the rave then. So yeah,
Oh, I love that.
yeah.
That's given me goosebumps. But you found the perfect community, the perfect home for you at that time in your life. Then there wouldn't have been any other scene or culture or movement which would have suited where you were at mentally, or
No,
what you wanted from life at all. Really, you'd fallen in with
no.
the perfect crowd there.
Exactly. I mean, I can like, a lot of my friends from that I did have in school when when they graduated from school, they were hitting the pubs in the town, getting lash up on beer every weekend, probably working a part-time job and just kind of being a bit thuggish and brutish, and that wasn't the life for me. I mean, as much as I was in rebellion to myself and everything and stuff, I was a bit of a hippie at heart and I wanted unity. That was my thing. I wanted unity, and I loved that feeling when everyone would come together in front of a massive sound system in the mud and the wind and the rain, and everyone would just be like bouncing together and keeping everyone warm from their own heat. And the drugs were fueling you. You were high. The music just took you on journeys, and that was all I wanted. I didn't want to go to the pubs and the clubs and all of that shit. It was all about the fields, the warehouses, the barns. That was it.
Oh wow. Yeah, I'm rippling in goosebumps now. That's
Yeah.
amazing. So how long did that? I mean, you painted an incredibly beautiful picture there. So how long did that buzz last? Because obviously, in yourself and in your life, other things were happening, changes were
Yeah.
happening and stuff like that. So how long did that bubble remain a bubble for you in a way?
Yeah, so I think it was like probably around the age of about 19, 20 years old. That's when things with my personal life, my how I felt about my gender and stuff really started to take a toll on me. I was also kind of at this point where the there's that stupid song, "The drugs don't work" or whatever. It just makes you worse.
Yeah.
Just want to feel whole again. I was kind of like in that kind of stage, and I was DJing a lot, and I'd say I was becoming quite prolific within my circles and the sound systems that I was involved with as being, one of the good DJs, and I was feeling like that was taking more of a hold over my life than the speakers, that they're just wanting to go to the rave purely just to actually DJ instead of go there, get high and be unity. That was kind of starting to take hold. I was wanting to play more than go there and just get mash up. And also this feeling of dysphoria that I'd been having since an early age was just taking over. So around 19, 20 years old, that's when I was like, enough, like I need to go get some help. I'd already been to my doctors about this before and stuff, and it was really becoming prevalent, and I was getting depressed and everything like that. So I actually started to step back a little bit from the free parties, and actually at that time my crew and a few other of the crews had started doing club nights. You know, everyone was starting to get older. The guys and girls that I was like going to the party survival crew and everything, they were 3, 4 years ahead of me already. So they were into their mid 20s, some of them going on to their early 30s. And you know, for them, they kind of also backed away from the rave a little bit more and wanted to focus more on doing club events. And so that's where it took a turn, really. You know, Storm Sound System started doing parties in Oxford in a club there. We started going to Milton Keynes to do these events at this venue there, and bits and bobs like that. And it made me realize that I was starting to go into the clubs DJing, and I was still playing drum and bass like at that point, and kind of getting lost in. I had been getting lost in techno quite a lot, you know, in as well. So I was like in this techno land, drum and bass land. I was like, some parties I'd play techno, some parties I'd play drum and bass. In the clubs, I was wanting to play drum and bass a bit more, but then sometimes I'd play a techno set, depending on what room we're doing techno and trance and what doing drum and bass. So I was like kind of a bit in between all of it, and I was also starting to be myself at raves. So at the clubs, and it was a very weird time for everyone, you know, because um
I was
not
going to
only
ask, like, did your friends, did a lot of them know? Did it seem really natural then when you started to be more honest with yourself and more authentic with yourself and coming out essentially? Did a lot of them already know and they were just waiting for you to kind of come out, or was it a surprise for a lot of your friends?
yeah, I think my close friends, they kind of got it already, and I think they'd kind of, you know, over the years I'd spoken about it, and I'd explained, you know, my feelings, and also I had so much more fun bowling around with my girl mates than my guy mates half the time. And you know, I think a lot of people there knew it, but then there were some people in my kind of close proximity that just didn't get it. And then there was some people in the rave scene that really just didn't understand. And it was a bit of a tough time, you know, it was kind of weird. But I think also people could see that, you know, there was something different going on with me in not just how I was presenting and stuff like that as well, but where I was trying to go with my music and my inspirations and aspirations. You know, I wasn't just playing a set and, you know, like not looking at the crowd, staring at the DJ mixer, taking off my headphones at the end and walking off stage. You know, I was active behind the decks. I was, you know, I was enjoying it just as much as the people that were dancing. I was feeding off that energy. People could see that difference in me, and it started to come across with my music. I kind of figured out at that point because we got Vestax, you know, and Vestax you could plus pitch on them, so they had like plus minus 50, right?
Yes.
So I figured that I could actually play drum and bass, but speed techno records up like on the decks fast enough that they would go with drum and bass. And I was trying to do something different. It didn't. Sometimes it was just all over the place, a bit weird, but it was a direction. It was a new direction. I was looking different and everything like that. And so yeah, that was kind of like that was a turning point, I guess. And I was doing that in the clubs,
But that
underground
was the
clubs.
birth of speed bass right there, then, really, the earliest kind of traces of your own take on, obviously, 4/4 and fast music has existed since the days of Belgian hardcore and stuff,
Of
10,
course,
15 years
yeah, of
before.
course.
But your own take on it, then, that's the kind of the foundations for the signature that we know and love you for now.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, in a way, it's a bit different. I think because of like the style that I have and what I try and portray and do, the whole terminology of speed bass has kind of got a bit misconstrued in a way. But back then, what I was trying to do was I was trying to invent something that I heard in my head and in my mind as jungle tech. So that was what was starting it. It was taking jungle drum and bass and mixing it with techno, but not slow like back in the day of like hardcore when you'd have jungle rhythms with a 4/4 kick at
Mm.
like, 150, 140 BPM, the likes of Moving Shadow, that kind of era, I was
Mm.
trying to do this like thing where I could take my favorite drum and bass tunes and jungle tunes, play them at their normal speed, and then find like a UK techno track, not say acid or anything, just straight banging beats, put it over the top. And I was trying to form the sound of jungle tech, and that was my thing. That was it. I was like, right, this is it. 175 techno jungle drum and bass, let's fucking go. And that was what I was focusing on basically. But it was kind of a bit hard because there'd be points because I wasn't, I was only ever on two decks. I didn't really verge onto a third deck. But I was only ever on two decks, always Vestax because they were popular then. But there'd be a point where I'd have to come out of a drum and bass tune and it'd just be left with techno. And then there'd be a point where I'd come out of a techno tune and we'd just be left with drum and bass. Usually I'd use the build-ups or whatever for that. But that's what got me thinking, I need to I need to learn how to make this stuff. I need to produce. I need to get into that side of things. And luckily, around that time, a few of my friends already in my sound system collective, a guy called Mitosis, Udo, big up Mitosis, and also Johnny Allen, Little J, who's Turbulence 303, and now known uh as something else. I can't believe what his name is now. Break the trend, Jesus. Sorry, Jay. But yeah, they were already producing. They were making beats, and I wanted to get into making beats too. And they showed me, at the time, Reason 3.0, and this was when I was about 20. And Jesus Christ, it was so hard. I didn't
Yeah.
understand it. And then and then Udo, my mitosis, showed me Ableton because he was working on Ableton. Jay was on Logic, but Jay kind of knew both. And I got into Ableton. I started playing about with it and realized it was really addictive. And then that was it. And I started taking my jungle drum and bass tunes and recorded them into Ableton, and just would EQ out the bass and just put a kick bass underneath it and like make tunes that way, sample that way and stuff like that, and then export them, put them on CDs because CDJs were starting to come in, and I was going to gigs playing tracks off CDJs, but also taking my vinyl with me, mashing up the drum and bass a bit with that as well, and that was kind of what kicked
Wow.
it all off. But that was the jungle text style. That was my jungle tech sound. So
Right. And that's the very kind of start then of you finding your own signature in a way, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. But what is weird is that sound kind of came under the umbrella of hard tech. It's basically like a European sound, very European. And because I was making this like kind of fusion of drum and bass and techno that was around, 175, 180 BPM, sometimes up to 190 actually, I'd take it. And I was I started putting that sound onto SoundCloud. I'd started a SoundCloud, and I came across this guy called Vandal.
Mm.
And he was making this sound that had similarities, you know what I mean? He was making Ragatech. And Ragatech had these wicked jungle drum and bass sections and stuff like that as well. And I got really into it, and it kind of took me to a point where I even kind of stopped really listening to and buying much drum and bass and stuff. I was more like, wow, what, this Ragatech thing's cool. I actually like some of this hard tech stuff. And before I knew it, I had kind of got put on by Rachel Rackett, actually, who's she's a London girl from Croydon. She manages the Acid Techno gang, Chris Liberator, all of that
Yeah,
lot.
yeah.
But for me, huge inspirations. Because I when I'd been playing techno at the raves, it was always that London acid sound and everything like that, which dominated the rave scene. If it wasn't London Acid City Techno, it was hard trance or hard house,
Yeah.
and the new energy kind of died out, like kind of when, probably like 2003 or 2004, and everyone switched to this like in my area like the hard trance and the acid techno and stuff. So they were a massive inspiration, and Rachel Rackett came to see me play. I was playing at a gig in Brixton at the Jam, and she linked me up with a guy called Ben, who was Vandal's agent. And Ben liked what I was doing, Ben Dedek from Electro Booking, and he signed me up. And then I started gigging in Europe a lot, and I was taking this sound, which for me inherently was drum and bass and jungle, and playing it in Europe. But I was a bit stuck between a rock and a hard place because with Vandal is like Ragga Tech King, right? His sound Ragga Tech is like global, because
Mm.
reggae and dub is global, so no matter where Vandal goes, people already know his tracks because it's one of the biggest sounds out there, it's one of the biggest world music sounds going. And, so he had no problem wherever he went. And I was kind of like stuck in this rock and a hard place because my sound was too British for Europe and too European for the UK, so I was kind of in this weird place, and but it was still fun, but back then traveling in Europe, the rave back then was on a different level, and I'd come back to play in the UK a lot. I was playing more and more at the big sound system parties that were going on in the clubs. I'd still make it to free parties and raves, I hadn't turned my back on it completely, but I was also going through my transitional years, and it was a different life for me by that point. And
Hugely. So this is,
yeah,
let's just get a timestamp on this just to get a kind of sense of chronology because it's moved so fast and
yeah.
there's been so much there. What are you there, like kind of 25, 26, maybe?
Yeah, yeah. So
This
early
is mid 2000s or early 2010s.
yeah, so probably around late 2000s, well, probably 2008, 2009, so just before 2010, I guess. And I was, yeah, probably in my 25, 26 kind of era, I think. I can't really remember. It's like if I did the maths, I'd figure it out, but I'm not good at quick maths. So around
No.
those time points. And I was at that point, I'd been known as Drew for a while when I first came out in my early 20s, very late teens, early 20s. I was like, everyone stopped calling me Andy. I want to be known as Drew, and I'm starting to go through this thing, and that's when the sound started happening, and I then wanted to change my name again, which was really confusing for my friends, to Mandidextrous. So I wanted to be known as Mandi, and Mandidextrous came about because I play the drums. You've got to be ambidextrous to play the drums to a certain extent.
Mm.
And my name was Andy, and I transitioned, so Mandy Dextrous seemed to fit. And my music style and sound was eclectic, so it kind
I
of
was
all
going to
went.
say it's always fit you really kind of perfectly musically. Your variety really in that ability to not live in one particular sound, but be fluent in all of these different musical languages and stuff. So it's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
perfect name. And I am completely ignorant. I've not had friends who've transitioned or anything.
Hmm.
Obviously, have friends who are trans, but I've only met them as trans people.
Hmm.
I would imagine that the transition is incredibly turbulent. And while you're going to all of these raves and living life on the road and getting into production and building your own sound, that's enough of a head fuck in itself. While also going through a transition and really finding yourself with that as well.
Hmm.
How did you find peace of mind during all of that? Because it must have been so chaotic within your mind, within your career, within your creative life, amongst your friends.
Hmm.
Your life must have been, like I said before, like a state of flux, really, but in a different way. How was that for you?
Yeah, well, actually, it was the music that I think saved me. It was the music that saved me. It was learning and developing the ability to write really helped me because when I write music, it's the one time where I don't think about anything apart from writing the music, I'd been DJing quite a while at this point, and the novelty of DJing for me at that point had kind of worn off a little bit because I knew that I wanted to do something different and bring something different to a table, and that's what I was trying to do, speeding up the records and all of that stuff. But learning to write, it completely saved me, and it took me away from the noise, I'd shut myself away and I'd think about what I wanted to do with my music and my career and with my life a little bit and who I wanted to be and what I wanted to develop into. And at home I was like, you know, I was experimenting. I was like, not only on the computer and with my music, I was experimenting with makeup, with clothes, with different hair and different looks. And I almost felt like the music that I was writing was almost a soundtrack to that. And it was a really special time. It was bloody scary and it was really turbulent. There was a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry, and like kind of I was scared at points, when I'd go to the raves, sometimes I'd feel really insecure and I used to get some shit from people and stuff like that, but I just I just kept my focus, I guess, and it was the music that helped me keep that focus. And ever since, I've always said if I didn't have music, I don't know what I'd have done with my life. So it was really that and around, my kind of mid-20s, I'd been with the clinic in London for a while. I was deep in hormones, like changing my hormone regime and I was spending a lot more time focusing on how I present. Back then I used to be super femme, like really femme, because when I grew up in the illegal free party scene and stuff like that, when I was pre-20s, I was very much like angsty about it all, and I was like really boy, I was living really boy, and it was I think it was out of protest of my own feelings, and then
Yeah.
coming into my 20s when I decided to do something about it, I just hit this like wall of mad femme and I was like, yeah, I was really concentrating on how I looked and also my music and yeah, it was just that was my life. It was weird, but it
Yeah.
was my life.
A very liberating time then, and just as much as it's like, a turbulent time for you, a very incredibly liberating time where you stopped stopping yourself, you were listening to yourself and just going with your feelings, really. I would imagine then in that type of way there's a lot of freedom, as well as the kind of much more serious side and the depression that comes with
Hmm.
it. Very liberating at points for you as well then, I would imagine.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for me, going out as my true self then was a really special thing, and especially going to, because by this point, even though I was going to play the club nights and the club raves and stuff like that, I was still visiting like the parties, and actually I kind of got quite involved with like the London scene, going to the London squat parties. And the squat parties could be a really scary place, even for the most normal of people,
Yeah.
because you've got like all kinds of people, and London's a big place, and it was daunting. It was really bloody scary at times, and there was points where I felt a bit scared for my own safety, because being a country bumpkin and going to the country raves, like no doubt you did up in Wales, um, like it's a bit of a different vibe when you go to a big city and go to big city raves, big city squat parties, it's
Oh
like
my God.
it can be
Yeah.
daunting as hell, right? And bloody scary, but I still went, and because I was putting my music on the internet, people knew of me. Do you know what I mean? So people knew that I was making this sound and let me go on their rigs, even though they probably didn't get me. Do you know what I mean? They'd look at me and be like, "Are you?" Back then I used to have people saying, "Are you a man or are you a woman? What's going on with you? Like, you don't sound like a woman."
Wow.
Like, and and this, that, and the other. But then again, I did also have some other people that would just be fine about it. So it was kind of one of those. But I just wanted to play my music and that was it. I just wanted to play my music. And when I did, people danced, and it didn't clear the room, it didn't, do anything like that. In fact, people loved it. So I was like, cool. I mean, this is getting me somewhere. So it was a weird time, but it was the music that was helping me through my transition for sure.
That's beautiful. That
Yeah.
is beautiful. And can I ask, at what point then did you reconnect with your mum? Because you left home and she didn't understand in your teens, but I'm
Yeah.
assuming by this stage she very much did understand what you were going through.
Yeah, so I think it was kind of towards my early 20s. Yeah, that's when I started to reconnect with my mum because I started coming away from the squats and stuff like that. And in fact, I ended up living in a flat with some friends, and I was trying to make money from the things that I was good at. I had a few jobs working in pubs and bars and bits and bobs like that. And, I was trying to actually lead a proper life a bit more. Mum came back down to earth a little bit and didn't really understand, but accepted me enough to be like, we'd speak on the phone. If I was in real hardship, she'd come and help me out, give me some food or whatever. So yeah, we did start to reconnect in my early 20s, and that kind of bond then grew again. And I'm now close with my mum. So yeah, it's
Oh,
turned out fine.
go on. That's beautiful. That's
Yeah,
beautiful. So
it's really
now, I mean, we're kind of at the end of your 20s now,
good.
and by this time, by this stage, you completely, you're very, very fluent on the computers, and it was giving you that kind of freedom and that space and that release. There's no coincidence then that's when you set up Amen for Techno, because that was 2010, I think, wasn't it, when
Yeah,
you launched that?
exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. 2010, I started aiming for techno, and I was still in Buckinghamshire at that point. And yeah, it was an interesting thing. I only started it because I wanted a place to put my music out, because I could see how niche this kind of sound was. And obviously there was bits and bobs I'd come across in drum and bass that had this like 4/4 vibe. There's like Big Bad Bass by Dillinger. That was one of the ones that I was like, oh, that's a banger, and but there was like very limited places that I thought I could put that music. So I was like, I'm gonna start a record label. What do I love? I love amens and I love techno, and I'm going to call it Amen for Techno. All my friends thought it was the stupidest thing. I
Mm.
didn't even think it would stick at the time, but it did. And because my music was going on SoundCloud, and Simon was also pushing this similar sound in the UK. There was other people like from like the breakcore scene, like my best friend, he's like my brother, Matt Scratch. I found his music, he found my music, and I was like, bro, like, can I put some of your music out on my label? And he was the first person I signed.
I was going to
And
say, I think he's the first person who was besides yourself, because the first 10 or so releases are all yourself, really, aren't they? And
yeah,
yeah, it's
yeah,
Matt
yeah.
Scratch is the first artist then who kind of joined and started to form like, a family of artists then on the
Yeah,
label.
yeah, yeah. Matt Scratch came along, and then T Menace Hector, who like both me and Matt and Hex, we're prolific. We've written so many collabs together. Um and then it started to build. We had Major Upset come on board, E. coli, Slinks as well, and it kind of spiraled. I started just releasing music for free on SoundCloud with under the moniker Amen for Techno Records, and then I got offered a P&D with Toolbox Records in France, a pressing and distribution deal. Um and Christoph from Toolbox Records, big up Christoph. We don't work together sadly anymore, but he started putting out our vinyl for us, and that started to flood into Europe, and it just spiraled from there. We started bringing on more artists, and by that point, I started playing in Bristol quite a lot, and that gave me a new connection into a rave scene that I had no idea even existed. And
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
the
So
Southwest scene.
Bristol. Bristol was kind of like quite late on your radar or late on your locations than it hadn't, because Bristol
Yeah,
for me was the free party kind of, that's where we would find the best free parties really.
sure.
It was the
Yeah,
bridge between South Wales and London for us. This was like
yeah,
years before, but
yeah.
Bristol came onto the radar for you then a lot later in that way.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. I think one of the first like Southwest parties I went to was the Wentworth Forest one.
Ah,
Which
go
was like
on.
DMT were there, Dissident, KSS, like loads of rigs were there, and that was the first Southwest party I'd went to, and I remember I remember being so nervous to be there and being at the DMT setup and seeing Vandal playing, and I was like, ah, he's the guy that I've been following on SoundCloud, like he's the bloody guy. And then after that, Stibbs came on as well, and I'd already heard Stibbs's breakcore and stuff like that, and it was like, oh God, this is a madness. And then I started playing in Bristol at like hard sessions, Mattycore. And the DMT guys, DMT went on to form Boomtown. That's basically Boomtown.
Wow.
And DMT used to do these parties at Lakota called Hard Sessions, and Matty Core invited me up there to start playing, and that was my kind of footing on the Bristol scene, and then yeah, it just kind of I started playing in Bristol loads, started going to more Southwest parties, becoming part of the community there. And then finally in 2014, I moved to Bristol. And that was just purely because I started playing at Lakota at these parties called Happy Days, which Slinks, who's on my label, he was putting on for the students. And he used to love my sound. He was making similar stuff for the label. And so I just started playing all the time. And I was playing so much in Bristol that I basically just moved to Bristol, and that was 2014. Also, the turning point where I met Shosh as well. So, yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Mm,
Excellent. Excellent.
yeah.
And by this stage, you surely didn't feel like you were stuck between a rock and a hard place or anything, then that you'd kind of established yourself. Or maybe still in Europe, you still did have that feeling.
Yeah, in Europe I did. Yeah, in Europe I still felt stuck between a rock and a hard place because, like I said, the sound was a bit too UK for Europe. It was catching on, but I didn't have, sorry, I've got a bit yeah, I didn't have quite the techers then, I didn't have my production was okay, but it wasn't like high level, but it was good enough to play out. So it's still a bit amateur. Um, and uh, and in the UK, it was like the hard tech scene in the UK was very niche. It still is very niche. But it was being pushed really well in the Southwest, and so that's why I think I found my home here in Bristol was because there was people like DNT and Jigsaw and people like that around this area that were pushing that sound. It was either breakcore up here or tech, hard tech, or techno, I guess, and drum and bass, obviously, of
Yeah.
course, drum and bass.
Yeah. All in that kind of mix. Then
Yeah.
the raving community in the Southwest has just always seemed that much more open-minded to
Mm.
that type of fusion. I mean, I know that there's probably going to be people listening from all other parts of the UK thinking, fuck off. Like if you go to free parties, you're generally open-minded about music
Yeah,
and like
yeah.
it quite extreme, but there is definitely something about Bristol. It's
Yeah, yeah, there really is the energy. It was the energy that brought me here. When we used to do the free parties down south, and we'd have those moments, like I said earlier, in front of the speaker, everyone together in unity. That was here in Bristol at that point. Do you know what I mean? Down south, it kind of died out a bit, and it was just hard trance parties after hard trance parties. It all got a bit rough and rude. There wasn't much variation, and it was all just a bit stagnant anyway. And I think that's why I ended up going to the London parties a bit more for a bit more variation, and then ended up in the Southwest. And by the point that I hit the Southwest, I just feel like it was on a complete upward trajectory in the sense of high energy, aggressive, fun, fast music, and just vibes, and I love that. I absolutely loved it. I lapped it up.
Yeah. So once again, similar to the previous chapters of your life where you fell into raving, you'd found your people, you'd found a place where you felt
Yeah,
comfortable and where you could operate and be
yeah,
creative and push boundaries and things like that. Then really, so
yeah. And
at
also,
that stage,
no one also knew me as well as they only knew me as Mandidextrous. They didn't know me like my past crew had. They knew me as Mandidextrous. So that was a big thing, you know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You're not carrying any of the past with you or anything
Mm.
like that, really. It's almost like a kind of fresh book rather than a fresh chapter in that type of way, I would imagine.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. It made such a difference in my life. You know, obviously, my old friends were still in my life to a certain extent, but you know, by this point, a lot of them were kind of starting to settle down in life a bit more. They weren't really going out taking speakers through muddy fields every weekend anyway, you know, and a lot of them had started, you know, career jobs and stuff like that. So for me, it was like a new lease of life here. So yeah.
And at that stage, did you think, I don't know how you look at your career, but at that stage, did you feel that you'd kind of reached the peak of your career? Because obviously, everything else that has unfolded since then in the last 10 years
Hmm.
had yet to happen. Where
Hmm.
were your aspirations and ambitions at that stage?
So at that point, I you know, circa 2013, 2014, when I made the leap and moved to Bristol, I was in my 30s, so I just turned 30, and I'd just been through like crazy things in my life. I'd just been through a serious operation that troubled me a lot, and I managed to come to Bristol and immerse myself into my surroundings there. And for me at that point, I kind of felt like I'd kind of landed back in this kind of like teenage mindset, you know. I'd like been through this massive journey up to that point, and then I hit Bristol and you know, bear in mind for the past like I don't know, like 8 years or so on my transition, I'd given up drugs. I wasn't getting messed up. I wasn't doing drugs. I was smoking some weed, but I wasn't drinking or anything like that. I was concentrating on my transition. Been through a lot, hit Bristol, and then I basically just felt like a teenager again. I started doing loads of speeds and really just like kind of like partying hard, you know, and my aspirations at that time didn't really occur to me that what I was pushing towards was a real solid career in music. I was just obsessed with writing music, obsessed with my friends that were also on my label writing this music, and all my focus was putting this sound into the crowd, you know, and I'd befriended Vandal by that point. I'd made friends with Stivs and all of the Bristol, you know, head honchos, Ed Cox, everyone, you know, all of those big names that are here in Bristol had become my peers, my friends, people I was working with, and my focus was their focus. It was instigating the tech into the scene. Do you know what I mean? And that was where it all lied for me. And it was a mad time. And you know, I'd met Shosh, Elusive Festival 2014. I got stranded and I was with my old crew from my old ends, because that festival Elusive is actually put on by the guys that I used to do illegal raves with and go to illegal raves with down south.
Oh, wow.
So they put on that festival, and that was their first year, 2014. And I'd gone to play, and you know, obviously played a set of all my own music. It was all tech and you know, jungle tech sound. And on the last day, I got stranded by a mate, and I was a man of it. I'd already got my stuff to Bristol to Slinks's house, but I had no way of getting back there. And I bumped into this girl because I was trying to find some smoke, and we just connected straight away like that. And I was like, I don't suppose you're driving back to Bristol. She's like, mate, I'm moving to Bristol after this festival. All my stuff's in my van. Like, I'll give you a lift. And
Oh,
then
wow.
we
Go
were
on.
literally joined a hip, you know, we became best mates, still are. And she's like my sister. And we both immersed ourselves into the Bristol scene. She had come to Bristol to forward Garage Girls that she'd started at Boomtown. I'd come to Bristol to basically forward, aiming for techno, get involved with the tech scene here and the energy. And that was our drives, our drives was to come here, implicate our brands and our sounds and what we're doing and just get amongst it. That was it.
Oh, and I would say that's highly ambitious, highly motivated, then, but not in a kind of career way, but in a passion way. Like, there's
Yeah,
obviously going to lead to a career and it takes up your whole life. So it is a career, but it's not in a kind of strategic way. It's literally just, I fucking love this and I want to see this out in the world and I'm going to push it as far as I fucking can.
basically. I didn't even think it would be a career, to be honest. I just thought I'd, maybe make a bit of a name for myself as a label, putting out this sound and as an artist a bit. I wasn't focused on that as a career at that point. I was getting offered to play sets for money, which was sick because it meant that I had a way of making money. And also my record label, I started doing merch and we were quite prolific for our merchandise. We've sold 7,000 hoodies over the years. I don't even know, but it was one of those things. I started buying artwork from people, putting them on hoodies, everything like that. And that was my life. And Shosh was the same. She was selling a Garage Girls merch. She was getting booked for shows, small fees and stuff like that. So that was it. And because I was with this agency that Vandals on in that are based in Leipzig. I was still gigging a bit in Europe, not all the time, but certainly once a month. And for low fees, but I was getting about, and I guess it wasn't until um probably about 2016, 2017 that I started to really realize that I might actually have a shot at kind of making a career out of this. And that came through starting work with Boomtown at Scrapyard.
Right.
I played one of my all-time biggest, like most memorable shows at Scrapyard that year. I opened the venue, first DJ on that stage for an hour and a half in the burning sun at Boomtown. And it was the year that there was a massive fire in the background, I think.
I was going
No,
to say, was that the year when the car park went up on fire and stuff?
it
Or
wasn't that year. It was the year before. I was the first person to DJ. The year before, 2016 was when it opened. 2017, I think, was when there was the fire. But yeah, it was just iconic, and it was the first time I'd been paid by Boomtown to play. I'd played Boomtown quite a few times before in like Body Shop and bits and bobs like that, through getting to know Stivs and everyone when I moved to Bristol. But that was the first time I got paid for a show at Boomtown, and I was working there as well. So it was like, all right, this might be a career. And I was supporting myself through the record label and through my DJing, and my gigs were picking up in Europe, and I was becoming busy. So yeah, it was that was the turning point, really, I think.
wow. And then he pushed it even further. And at
Yeah.
this point, within a year or so of this, is when
Mm.
EQ50 formed. Maybe 2 years. My timeline is a little bit shot now because it feels like
Yeah.
EQ50 have existed for a lot longer than they actually have. But I think it
Yeah.
was 2018 they launched.
Okay. Yeah.
I really should have done my research ahead of this call, really, in terms of dates. But that doesn't, I mean, that was the next kind of step up, then, really. Even at that stage, then you're kind of starting to think, like, right, okay, you've
Mm.
almost landed, things are becoming a bit more consistent, perhaps. As
Yeah.
consistent as they can be within that culture and that, within underground music, full stop, really. Because it's
Yeah.
never,
Yeah.
nothing is ever guaranteed, is it?
No, no. I mean, I was being 100% myself. At the time, I'd kind of sunk into the Bristol life. I also, because when I hit Bristol, I kind of dropped into doing drugs a bit again and stuff. But that only lasted a few years, and then, by the time I was 34, I was kind of back on the sober flex, just focusing on writing my music, working closely with the crew, and really immersing myself in Bristol. I started doing my own events as well in 2016, Kiss My Kit Drums. That's when that started at the Black Swan, which was purely focused on hard tech, and the jungle tech, ragga tech sound. and from day one, we were selling out that venue every single time. And yeah, I kind of like I was really becoming a bit of a Bristol figurehead, and yeah, all of that was going well. But um by that point, I was starting to kind of question my gender a bit more. I'd been through a lot of hardship with my gender. I have a gender battle that goes on. It's like I don't know if I'm ever going to really come to a crux with that, but it's like an ongoing thing. And I was struggling a bit again with my gender stuff, and my friends knew about it. You know, my guys on my record label and my predominantly close circle of friends, Shosh and Lady Locks and everyone I was with, they became my family. They understood, and they've always encouraged me to try and express it and be myself. Um and I was also caught up in this kind of feeling where I was going out to Europe, playing on the same lineups as Vandal and the big guys in hard tech, you know, like Bill X, Floxy Tech, Matt Weaselbuster, Guigui, all of these guys there. And I was going out playing these shows on the same lineups as them, getting just as much attention as them, and yet I was playing for low fees when they're playing for massive fees. And at that point, it was like, you know, just after 216, 217, when I was coming into my kind of mid 30s to late 30s, I was starting to think like, why is this happening? Why can I not get past this glass ceiling? You know, I'm trying to now focus on the fact that I could have a career here, but
Mm.
I need it to be sustainable. And it was a frustrating time for me actually. And I started to get jealous and I started to get envious of what my peers were achieving, and the music industry started eating me alive actually. At that point, I feel when you as an artist kind of get to a level where you start becoming recognized for a certain thing, um it's getting past that point, which is the hard thing. You know, it's like it's the, you know, the butter starts going hard and you've got to find your way through to get out the other side.
Yeah.
And
Because there's that initial novelty of a new artist, and then there are years and years of, you know, and people almost, you know, that people jump on a new artist to begin with, but then after that novelty kind of goes off, then they're just there, but they haven't gone up to that next level. And it's very easy for any artist to get lost
mm,
in those kind of that next stage of your career, which is essential for most any creative people to go through. But I would imagine then with the glass ceiling and everything else, you know, being a non-binary artist made
mm.
that a million times harder again, or more frustrating.
Yeah, it was. And you know, it's like with the industry, like because at that time, you know, Shush was starting to get quite a lot of heat on what she was doing. And because we were really close, I could see what was happening for her within the industry. And we both could understand that for some people, the industry is an easy game. You know, you get spotted, you get picked up, boom, you're massive, you're famous, whatever. But for other people, it's a long journey. It takes
For
time.
most people, I
Yeah,
would say, for
for
most
most
people.
people, yeah. I mean, there's the lucky 1% that, you know, get through straight away, boom, cool. But for most of us, it is a hard slog. So, you know, I was kind of eaten up by that quite a lot. And you know, it was really tough. And then, you know, coming towards just before the pandemic, you know, probably about 2018 time, I was feeling like I kind of had had enough of putting myself out there. I was tired. I felt like I was running around UK and Europe like a blue ass fly, paying for small fees and watching all of my friends grow fat and get bigger, when we'd been on the same trajectory for so long. And it was kind of eating me alive and also making that sound, that jungle tech sound. For me, the jungle tech, ragged tech sound was also becoming stale as a producer because for me, I love all genres of music, and I couldn't find a way to express that enough within that sound, certainly to a professional level. And so I started getting quite bitter actually, and just quite fed up with all of it.
Oh,
And
no way.
yeah, and actually just before the pandemic, I it's when I really was battling hard with my gender dysphoria again. I realized that, maybe the stuff I've been through was like a massive regret and mistake, and I was spiraling into depression, and I was ready to hang up my headphones and call it a day. And then the pandemic hit, and then things all just went a bit weird.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, but
hugely.
kind of weird in a good way,
Mm,
It was I stopped and had to just do nothing, and I kind of realized that, I still had this burning passion to listen to music, and spent a lot of time listening to drum and bass again. And we were having a lot of like house parties within our house. I was living in a massive house with like loads of us living there. There was me, Stivs, Josh from Borden Road, Shosh, and you know, everyone. And we were all DJs, so we were like, fuck it, let's just mix loads. And you
mm.
know, me and Shosh were like just taking her bassline tunes and garage tunes and speed them up to drum and bass speed. And that was the birth of speed bass. I was like, this sound is fucking cool. I love bassline and I love
Yeah.
garage, and having it sped up like this is a vibe, but it's got no bass to it because we sped it up so much. So I was like, all right, new direction. And that's when I started the speed bass sound. And that was very much focused on baseline and garage sounds just sped up to 175, kind of like I did with the jungle tech thing, but only using baseline as a foundation here. And that's where I coined the whole thing of speed bass in my head. And I started putting that sound online, and that started kicking off, and people loved it. And also I was like really getting back into my drum and bass and stuff, and then I applied for EQ50, and then the rest is fucking history. It all just blew up basically. So yeah.
Wow. So the difference between speed bass and jungle tech in a way is the emphasis then on the kind of the origin of the influence then, and because bassline is very kind of structured 4/4, whereas with jungle tech then you've got the kind of kick and bass which is slightly offbeat, isn't it, in a
Yeah,
way?
exactly. Yeah. I kind of, with the production side on the jungle tech, because it's I guess a form of hard tech. There's this thing that the producers do that is really technical, which I found really technical, which is all about good phase between your kick and your offbeat bass to make one big powerful sound. I just can nail it. I probably did nail it numerous times, but I got so obsessed with it, it became sterile, and it became a thing that I hated doing. And so the speed bass thing allowed me to take just a 4/4 kick and just write a bass line like I would in a drum and bass tune or a bass house tune or a bass line tune, and just get back to my old methods of producing that I used to do years and years ago before all of this became serious. And it just allowed me to express myself again. And I was like, wicked, I can make whoops and like whomps and stuff like that, and long noted bass lines over the top of 4/4 kicks. It doesn't have to be an offbeat bottom, 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 like kind of thing. And I also slowed down a bit because my mate Shosh was like, look, you're a fucking good producer, but if you want to, kind of get somewhere, you're writing too fast. Your music's like 190 BPM. You got to be off your fucking head on pills to dance to that stuff. Try slowing it down. And I was like, yeah, you're right, and like I just came back down to earth a little bit, and yeah, that kind of like whole thing was just a mad inspiration. I mean, I was listening to a lot of the guys on Crewcast before they went drum and bass and jungle, like Skepsis and Darksea and TS7 and people like that, Notion and stuff, and then also listening to a lot of drum and bass stuff and the levels of production and making these big shiny fat bass lines and stuff. I was getting into Serum a lot more, synthesizing stuff, and yeah, it just amalgamated into me making this speed bass sound, which kind of did start coming about just before um the pandemic. I'd written a
Yeah.
few tracks at that point in the speed bass style. I did speed bass volume 1 and this, that, and the other. So it actually kind of started a little bit before, but we really focused in on it in Corona, and then also really started working more on my drum and bass sound with EQ50. He provided the most amazing mentorship I could ever have asked for. I owe so much to that gang, and yeah, working with Ram and Jim and Hanno and all of that stuff, and then just getting this massive cuddle from the drum and bass scene, with full acceptance for who I am and all of that stuff. It was just amazing, just coming from being in the fields in those grotty, bloody, like barns and stuff like that, dancing to hard house and drum and bass to becoming a DJ, playing that sound, and then finding my own sound with it, to all the trials and tribulations I went through, to then end up back in drum and bass, meeting all of these peers that I never dreamt I'd be able to meet. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've, releasing on Andy C's fucking label and stuff like
Yeah.
that. It was like it just has been out of this world, and I still can't get my head around it at all. And especially someone from my background, with music and everything. So yeah, it's just
What a
been
journey.
a
What
bad journey.
Yeah, what a beautiful kind of full circle, and to know that and to see how well accepted you were by the scene. And it's really interesting you saying about like the sterile kind of approach to getting that perfect kick bass combo. There's
Mm.
so many sterile things within drum and bass in terms of, because the production has gone so high. It's,
Oh, it's
as you
so
know
high.
yourself, it's ridiculous.
So
But
bad.
that the high production techniques and benchmarks do create a sterile. There is that, there's a really fine line between being creative and being a scientist sometimes
Mm,
with production,
mm,
isn't there?
yeah.
So to find that you kind of come back into drum and bass, which I would say, because at that stage, at the end of the 2010s, Noisia had influenced people so much, and people were so eager to get to that Noisia level, which is
Yeah.
unobtainable, that they were forgetting the funk. So there was a period in drum and bass where it was becoming quite sterile, and then
Yeah.
suddenly there's this new wealth of new artists coming in who've been influenced by other things and stuff. You coming in with speed bass,
Mm.
there's another kind of it was a whole other kind of load of influences into the
Yeah.
melting pot, which drum and bass really, really needed at the time.
Yeah.
Sonically, even before we get to the ideas of any kind of concept of diversity, which obviously, is what founded EQ50 in the first place.
Mm.
Just musically, it needed more
Mm.
diversity, I think. And I say this as someone who works with Noiser every single week.
Yeah. Yeah. I
They'd
mean,
set the benchmark almost too high in a way. Like,
yeah, I mean, I definitely came across Noisia when I was, in my early years of production, and friends around me were playing a lot of their tunes, and neurofunk was getting big, and I could hear the funk in it for quite a while, but then it did become a bit sterile, and it did just kind of like lose stuff about it, because everyone was focusing so much on the technicalities of the track that they were losing the musicalities of the track. and
mm,
and um and also there was like this era of jump up that I completely skipped, like G-Dub, Taxman, like all of those guys there. And for me, because I was in this like hard tech land, it just seemed like this extreme sound in drum and bass and stuff. And it was really bizarre kind of skipping all of that. But whenever I'd go and play raves in the UK that were predominantly drum and bass lineups, and I'd play my tech sound, people would just go wild, and it was bizarre. It was really bizarre. Like, there's BrizTech here in Bristol, and Fash, Justin Fash, who runs BrizTech, had been booking me quite a while. And you know I just found it mad sometimes, because he'd have like mad drum and bass legends on the lineup, and he'd chuck me in the main room every now and again, and like I'd have people falling over the barriers, climbing on the walls, on the speakers, like everything. and
what?
um, and it just seemed so crazy, and it felt like the energy for that 4/4 influence was there. People in the drum and bass dance got it. They understood it, because I was colliding drum and bass with techno. um they could hear all of their, anthemic kind of sounds in there, like little snippets of General Livy here or Original Nutter there, or like, bits of the license coming in or whatever. And it still kept them going and interested. And I was kind of thinking for ages, like, this sound's gotta work in drum and bass. It does work in drum and bass. It might be a bit faster and a bit more techno influenced, but it needed to, I thought it could work. And then lo and behold, a few years down the line, you know, I've got to say, mad props to Rob Dimension, really like breaking the barrier there, putting out Offender, which was, I think, the biggest like 4/4 influence on drum and bass, in the 2020s, or just before that. I can't remember when it was exactly released, but seeing that come out, hearing that come out, it really made me have some hope that actually maybe my sounds could fit in drum and bass, and it has, and it's cool. I don't know how long it will stick around for, but for me, I'm not
I think it's
about
part of the vernacular now. It's part of the
yeah,
vocabulary just as much as liquid is, just as much as Nero is, just as much as
mm,
jump up is. And what's really interesting is then you see everybody's reaction. Some people are very ardent and passionate that drum and bass has to be break beats. It can't be
yeah,
4/4. Then it's called
mm,
hardcore and stuff. And it's the same argument that we've seen so many times with other subgenres where they've come in, but now it's established. That's part
mm,
of the palette of people who are
yeah,
getting into this sound.
yeah,
It's something else for them to draw on, and I think that's really exciting. It's really important to have that new, kind of new influence and stuff
yeah,
all of the
yeah.
time, really, or otherwise it gets stagnant. As you've said the stagnant word before, and it happens in all genres, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it does. I think, like when people start thinking outside the box a little bit more, exciting things start to happen, and having over the last, like, 3 years or something, seen like so many producers that I'd never expect, like Mosey putting out Party Muscle just
Oh God,
recently.
yeah.
It's like it's an absolute anthem. And when I first heard that, I asked for it on like before he'd released it, and I thought it was a remix of some old cheesy trance tune, but it's not. It's
Same.
an original anthem, and it works. The kids love it. The energy in the youth now thrive off that switch, and having it switch to a fast techno beat is great, as well as having it switch to a weird downbeat or whatever. It
Mm.
works. And likes of Jack Head and everyone pushing these different sounds, and it's just amazing. Like, and I just feel drum and bass has become so much more diverse from all of it. You got the neurofunk guys starting to go a bit more jump up neurofunky, like Teddy Killers, and obviously Noisier backed off, but they've still left a huge influence in the scene, and that's starting to get really interesting. And some of the guys from Europe, like Pythias and that, like kind of keeping
Yeah.
that sound alive as well. And then all the way down to people like Gyro Field, that's like really technical, like super experimental, and John and Manu, and all of that lot. It's just crazy how diverse it's become, and I just think that's so exciting, and I'm really here for it. I love the scene, but with the 4/4 influence and stuff like that, if it stands the test of time and stuff, that's great. But for me, I'm excited to be where I am right now. I'm excited for the future and where that's going to take me musically. I don't know. But I'm just really excited, and I'm really blessed to have come from where I have to be here now, and to have kind of established myself in the way that I have. And it is something to be proud of. And I mean, just you giving me that the other weekend is part of that journey, so yeah, it's been wild to say
Oh,
the
that's
least.
amazing. And then just to kind of confuse things even more, then kind of in terms of your musical versatility,
Mhm.
literally just minutes before we started this interview, I had a little listen to the Nang stuff that you've done with Stibbs. And you mentioned Stibbs a whole bunch of times. Like Stibbs has been a
Yeah,
major part, a close friend and a major part of your musical journey.
yeah,
This is something completely different again. I mean, it's like kind of garagey, grimy. I mean, it's chill out compared to some of the stuff that you do.
yeah,
But tell me
yeah,
about that because it's yet another kind of versatile feather in your cap in that type of way, or
yeah,
another
yeah.
musical language.
Yeah, well, me and Finn started this Stivs. We started this project probably about 5 years ago now, or 6 years ago. He'd come to live in the big house that we're all living in, and we were getting stoned quite a lot, and we're like, come on, let's like we'd tried writing tech together loads of times, jungle tech and stuff like that, and it wasn't really. The tunes were all right. We had one successful one with Raven Session, but we wanted to do something a bit different, and we kind of just set a rule between us. I'm not allowed to write crazy kick bass stuff. He's not allowed to write crazy amen breakcore, like, fiddly little amen shit. And we're like, let's just write something different, think outside the box. And we started writing, and it just was amazing. It was we were just really, really trying to do things different. We'd set BPMs at different BPMs instead of like always at 180 or 190 or 175. We're like, fuck it, let's do 143 or 162, or whatever. And we just wrote. And Finn's really eclectic. He's very influenced by all kinds of different music. So am I. And that was a result of that. And we've actually written probably two or three times more than what is there on that little playlist. And
Wow.
we've again not really known where the music sits genre wise, and didn't really know what to do with it. And I think I'm a bit precious over it because I love it. It's and we put a lot of time and effort into it, and so I didn't want it just to go out to the world and just do nothing. And so we sat on it for years and years and years. And so many of our friends that had got the playlist privately with all the rest of the tracks as well always were like, when are you releasing it? When are you going to put it out? And just recently I was like, you know what? Let's just put it on my SoundCloud. I get a lot of traction on there. It might get picked up by someone, or some people might like it, and it'd just be nice for other people to get to listen to it because it is some cool music. And
Some
there is.
really, really cool music on there. Like I'm really
Yeah,
looking forward to getting like to hearing more of it because I had enough time to listen to two tracks before this
yeah,
call, so
yeah,
I've still got all of that to dive into. So this is really like this has been going on behind the scenes during all of these,
yeah,
the ups and downs of your journey. This has been
yeah.
happening in the background as well. Then over the last 5 years,
Yeah, 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 definitely. It's been it was quite an emotional journey, that, because me and Finn don't live together anymore. We don't hang out so much anymore as well. We kind of became a bit estranged for a little while. And it's there's a lot of heart in there. And we've got a whole nother album called Kuiper Belt, which, because Finn's really obsessed with space and stuff like that, and Orc Cloud is a space thing, and Kuiper Belt is the next one, which is a bit more kind of like probably a little bit more experimental than that one, but it's like another 7 tracks, and then we've got other bits and bobs, and it's been a cool project. I've really loved it, and yeah, it was good to just put it up on my Insta and put it on SoundCloud so people can actually listen to it. So yeah, there's that project as well. But I write another project called Boxy as well, Boxy Music, which is BOXXI music. And that's like my techno kind of stuff, like slower, like 140 BPM, kind of a little nod to my kind of hard house and new energy days and stuff like that, and techno. So there's that project as well. And I write bits of that with Matt Scratch because he's got another alias called Move, and we do releases on his techno label, which is called LV426, because we're both obsessed by aliens, and LV426 is the planet that they land on, and yeah, so we have that whole thing as well. So I've got loads of different strings to my bow. I've got the slower techno project, the jungle tech thing. I've wrote some ragga tech, some straight hard tech, some speed bass, some drum and bass, some D&B 4/4, some down tempo shit. I love writing.
brilliant. I
Yeah, I love
love all of
writing.
that.
Yeah, it's
God.
great.
Oh,
Yeah.
but this is probably why reaching the end of the year now, that you need a break, don't you? You said before we started the interview that you're really looking forward to a break over Christmas and stuff. This is
Mm,
kind of the reason why then, because you don't stop and there's so many plates that you're spinning at any one
mm.
point that
Yeah.
you've overworked yourself, or you're involved in too many things, really, because it's hard
Yeah.
to say no, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, I see it all as opportunities, and because I'm really lucky to be in the music industry, and I just feel like passing up opportunities is just kind of I don't put myself first a lot of the time, and I see it as if I pass up an opportunity, um, you never know what could have happened from that.
Mm.
It's like I kind of it will eat me alive if I don't do something, because if I turn it down, with my music. I don't know what could have come of that if I'd have done it, because I think everyone is a music producer when things start to get serious and they take their stuff seriously. Everyone's kind of like hunting that big hit or that one track that will create something for them financially and stably. I mean, I'm getting on in life now. I turned 40 this year, and it's like for the first time ever, I'm starting to think of what's happening in my future. How am I going to sustain myself when I'm older? And so I take as many opportunities as I can, but it also wears me a bit thin. It tires me out. But I'm lucky to do it. So, it's just a double-edged sword, So just got to keep going, and I love it, as much as it does, yeah, wear thin sometimes. I love it. And what I am also learning is to just slow down a little bit as well. Sure, it's fine to sit here and write a million tunes every year, but in terms of my output and what I'm putting out there to the world, I really want to start concentrating on that a lot more now. And I'm starting to make my release schedule plans for next year, and I don't want to put out too much, but what I do want to put out is going to be of good quality, and really try and start portraying my better work, So yeah,
Wow, I
yeah,
think that's already happening. This year has been one of the most prolific and one of the most versatile ones in terms of the releases that you have put out into the
mm,
world. So I'd
mm,
imagine that that'll continue in 2004.
yeah.
What can you hint us at in terms of what's coming next year?
So I'm definitely going to be working with Born on Roads a bit more next year. We've actually got one coming out on the 15th of December, which is with Madi, and it's a track that I've been teasing on the internet for about bloody 5 years now. I've written about three different versions of it, and we finally have like, settled on this one. It got clipped to Bolter this year playing in the Hex stage, and it fully went off. It's a really good tune. That's coming out soon, and then next year I'm hoping to do a few more with them, focusing more on the speed bass sound for next year. Some D&B 4/4 bits are definitely going to come through, and yeah, I've got a couple that I can't really say about just yet, but they're on some of the like one of the leading kind of brands for D&B in the UK, and I've got one with them. Um and yeah, that's it. I don't have any more plans with Ram, sadly. And I'm gonna be kind of trying to push on to some new things now. So yeah, that's it at the moment. Mad gig schedule already coming in, some crazy shows, and obviously planning my Boomtown for next year with my new stage, and yeah, that's it for now. But yeah, also, there's one on Neuroheads as well. I'll give you that.
Oh wow, wow, you
Yeah.
got something coming on Neuroheads.
Yeah, yeah. With a good friend of mine called Tanakichi, we did a track on Ram called Higher,
Yeah.
and me and him have teamed up again, and we got a couple of bangers coming through for Neuroheads. So yeah, look out for that.
Wow, go on. Well, I can tell you now because I mean this will be common knowledge by the time this comes out. Is that they won the best newcomer label award at the same awards. So I don't know if you know that or anything like
Brilliant.
that.
I didn't know
So
that, and I'm
that's a nice
really
full
happy.
circle. Go
Yeah, I'm
on.
really happy for them because I get their promos, and I really like what they're putting out, and I like the Neuro thing, and I think it's good that they're trying to push it back forward here in the UK because it kind of died off here. You go
Mm,
to Czech Republic or Slovakia or Slovenia and stuff like that, and Neuro's fucking huge,
yeah.
and here in the UK it kind of just dropped off, and and it's a bit of a shame because at the moment I feel like there's a resurgence coming back there. It's not too focused on the technicalities. It's more focused on the good energy and the power. And yeah, I rate it. So I'm gassed for Neuroheads. That's wicked. So
Go
great.
on. And
Yeah.
I'm gassed for you. So thank you so much for taking the time to tell me all about your journey and your life. I feel it could have carried on for a lot longer as well. So is there anything else the world needs to know about Mandidextrous right now at the very end of 2023?
Just I guess I don't know. I'm ever changing. I'm ever evolving. And yeah, that's all I can say is I'm ever evolving and I love that. I don't think I can ever be kept under one rock. Do you know what I mean? I'm
No.
everywhere. So yeah, just
Life
that.
would be really boring if you were, I think, in general.
Yeah.
I think, in that type of way, just keeping yourself inspired and keeping yourself moving and keep finding things that excite you. That's
Mm.
one of the most important secrets of life, I think, really.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely, definitely. So yeah, just gonna carry on being me and just doing my thing and yeah, working with you lovely people and that's it, the industry is amazing and yeah, it's hard work at times, but it's worth it. So yeah.
Oh, and that's beautiful. Mandy, thank you so much.
No worries, Dave. That's cool.